A little bit more about Stacy before we dive in. She's an award-winning marketing professor at the Rutgers Business School, where she leads a new online Master of Science degree program in digital marketing, which is really cool. As a learning and development consultant to the Interactive Advertising Bureau, she launched the first NASI accredited professional certification programs in the digital media industry. And I'm excited to learn how she's going to teach us on using a digital detox, which seems quite contrary to teaching digital marketing. So
it certainly
this will be an interesting conversation. Once again, use the hashtag on Twitter, StuKentDS20. MVP award will come at the end, but we just like the conversation. Great conversation is happening on here as well. So feel free to use the chat, and we'll take those questions and have a Q&A session with Stacy after her presentation. So without any further ado, Stacy, I'm gonna jump out of here and let you take over.
Sounds good. Thank you. So hi, everybody. As was just said, I have launched recently a new Masters of Science program that's fully online here at Rutgers. And I'll be talking about that program at ProfCon in June. So if you're interested in that, definitely I'll talk about that then. But today what I'm going to talk about is a digital detox assignment that I assign to undergrads. I teach undergrad digital marketing, and this project is specifically for a social media and mobile marketing course is what we call it. I launched it at first because I was mindful of three things. First of all, these kids are like 20, 21 years old. And as long as they've been, a preteen and a teen, they've had a phone, and that phone has been a smartphone, and that smartphone has had social media on it. So they're coming into class kind of taking it for granted, kind of just assuming that this is what digital is, and not really having an idea that this is not the way we've always communicated. And this is a platform, much like there's many other platforms as future marketers they're going to be dealing with. So I kind of want to give them some perspective. I want to take them out of being inextricably linked into it and really be looking at it as a student of social media, as a student of marketing. So I'm mindful of that personal mindfulness that they need to acquire. And I'm also, of course, trying to help them get jobs and be mindful of their own way they're presenting themselves on social media, and knowing that employers are going to be looking at them on social media, and that they need to really know how to be a professional and develop relationships, and remembering their digital footprint, and that they leave a legacy, whatever they leave online. And then the third piece is how to become a more sort of ethical and global marketer, and really understanding the way audiences use this platform and how they can use this platform in a way that doesn't exploit those audiences, but of course enhances the relationship that they have with whatever brands that they're going to be working on in the future. So this project is more than just one assignment. It's actually a series of 3 different assignments that span 5 weeks of my semester with them. And I try my best to roll out one at a time and not kind of tip my hand as to what's coming next, because I want them to sort of build into this process. However, I've been teaching this now. I just completed my 3rd phase of this project. I've been teaching this for the last 3 years. So now students kind of know that if they take my class, they're getting a detox. And of course, speaking on it here is going to, they're all following me on Twitter, and they're seeing this as well. So they kind of now know. But the way I roll it out tries to build up to it and get a lot more out of it. So just starting with the first phase, I start the first phase in week 2 of the semester. So they've gotten used to what the course is going to be about. And I tell them, we're going to do a digital audit and just get a sense of how we use mobile and social and digital in general. And we're just going to explore that. We're just going to talk about our own usage in the classroom because I want to get to know you better. Okay, so that's how I sort of frame the first step. And I give them this assignment. This assignment is essentially a digital usage audit. And I know this is going to sound sort of silly because anyone can just look at their phone and say how much time they've been on their phone in the last day, week, month, whatever. But I have them fill out this form, and I'm happy to share these worksheets as well if this is something you're interested in doing, because they sometimes don't even realize what digital is. I know that sounds crazy, but if I ask them just point blank, you know, how many hours a day are you on social or are you on digital? They might say, I don't know, I check social media, I play some games, I watch YouTube. But once I prompt them with this chart that you're seeing, I remind them that other things are connected too. In their heads, they were born omni-channel, right? They're used to using their phones for everything. They check their phone when it's they're trying to see when the next bus is coming around campus. They're using their phones when they're on GPS, their alarm clocks. They're not even thinking about these things being connected activities. When I have this row here about audio, it rocks their world. They're like, so wait, Spotify counts when I'm connected? Like, it's just not in their brain to realize they are connected right now and you're using digital right now. It's not just music that happens to be on. So I go through this exercise in the classroom first, and we have some fun with it, and we talk about how, you know, we fill out this worksheet together a little bit, and then they go home and they kind of think more about it and they finish it up, and they come up with how much time they think they spend in minutes per day on an average day. Okay. Then this assignment asks them to go home and during that week before the next class to keep a log. And they are supposed to pick a 24-hour period, which is supposed to represent an average 24-hour period in the week. And it's kind of never represents average, but they use those same different categories and they start to become more aware. Oh, I was on Netflix. Netflix counts as connected. That's interesting. I was listening to Spotify. I was grabbing my phone when I was talking to my friend. I was grabbing my phone on the bus. And they start to become a little bit more aware of, all the times they spend per day. And they're just keeping this, log, and they're literally writing it down. And then the assignment asks them to do some reflection. And the reflection basically says, and I'm glad I have the paper in front of me because I can't read this tiny screen. The paper basically says that reflect on the gap. Is there a gap? First of all, how well did you estimate? Did you overestimate your usage? Did you underestimate? Why do you think that happened? And, what feelings do you have as a result of this gap? And just for this semester, I wanted to share what I found, which represents most other semesters as well, which is that on average, students, the class is pretty good at estimating their actual usage. And yes, if you're doing the calculation in your head, this is about 7.5 hours of connected digital time per day. This does not count. I told them not to count texting on their phone. I told them not to count talking on their phone. I told them not to count using their laptop for spreadsheets or for writing a report for school or any other work that's not connected to the internet, for that purpose. So this is all, pretty much within 10 minutes, they estimated it correctly this year. But what's more interesting when you dig under these numbers is that on an individual basis, only about 15% of the class estimated accurately within about a half hour. I gave them 30 minutes of plus or minus. Half the class overestimated their time, which was really interesting to me. I was surprised when I first saw that. And I was expecting more like the 38%, which underestimated and said, wow, I'm on this way more than I thought I was. But when I started probing with the overestimated group, it's because this assignment made them more mindful of their usage. So they would reach for their phone and go, oh my gosh, I'm on my phone all the time, I'm going to put it away. Or to make this exercise assignment easier and not have to record every single thing, they picked a 24-hour period where they knew they'd be busy at work and they couldn't really check their phone all day, so they wouldn't have to do much work for the assignment. So I think that overall, the theme of the class is what you see on the following slide, which these comments came from both the overestimated and the underestimated group. So the themes that emerge is they were surprised. They took for granted some of these, like I said, the checking of and the GPS, these things that are not even mindful that this means I'm connected right now, became aware. So they didn't realize how often they pull it out throughout the day. They didn't realize how often those small portions add up to one big, huge number. They realized that this one over here is great about using it on the toilet, at class, at work, even in front of their friends, and realizing how much that adds up. And I think that the bottom one here is really telling and kind of summarizes everything else. I never realized that I had reached for my phone whenever I had a free second. And that was really the discussion that we then had in class the following day. So all of this really helped generate mindfulness, awareness, being more conscious of us as digital consumers and not just magically having this tool in our pocket that's just a prosthetic brain that we use as a crutch all of the time. So this leads to the second exercise, which I can totally empathize with Elaine about the project where she got some moans and groans. I get a chorus of groans when I talk about this. And I had one student deadpan look at me and say, this is not reasonable of you to ask of your students. Like, is this okay? Did you clear this with the dean's office? Like, this is not okay. But I stand and I tell them it's doable. I give them a 48-hour detox. And it's not a full detox. I don't tell them they need to lock up their phones in, a safe or, keep it at home. I completely understand that they need it to survive. They need digital for use in their other classes. I don't want to deter them from doing their homework. I don't want them to oversleep if they need this. They've never seen an alarm clock before with a plug. It's an amazing thing. They need it for GPS. They need it to check the bus schedules. You'll hear this theme of bus because Rutgers campus is split across several locations and highways and rivers. So the buses is a very core part of the experience here in New Brunswick, in New Jersey, where they're constantly taking buses from class to class. So I tell them that they have 48 hours to refrain from extracurricular digital use, to be aware of all of the uses. And I list them all here so that there is no question, so that they realize, yes, this includes your music. Yes, this includes YouTube and Netflix. Watch TV. They have never thought about television before as something that was a viable option. Just thinking about really each thing you could possibly use it for, refrain from doing it as best as you can. So I give them these 48 hours free. I also ask them to keep a log. And the log is meant to record how they feel at different time periods, when they're feeling, like this is going to be super difficult, when they're feeling like they cheated. And I tell them, if you cheat, it's okay. Catch yourself, write it down. I just want to know your experience and how it goes. And what's really funny is when I first started teaching this project, my 14-year-old at the time daughter, I told her about it and I was like, so what do you think about this project? And she looked at me with those 14-year-old eyes and she said, Mom, how do you expect them to record a log if you don't let them use their phones? Like, duh. Like they don't even understand that, yes, you can carry a notebook and a pen with you. It actually works. It's okay. So they do this 48-hour refraining and they keep a log. And then I ask them to then reflect on that experience based on the notes in their log. So I asked them, what times of day were the most difficult and so forth. And would you do anything different going forward? And it's fresh in their minds. And of course, they might have initial commitment, but, it's interesting to know what their intentions are and what their takeaway is. So here's some of the takeaways that I just got from this semester's exercise. No surprise, the bus is a big one in terms of what time of day do you notice the impulse to check your device or computer? So mobile phone, bus. So many people talked about how weird it was to be on a dead, silent bus when everyone is staring at their glowing screen. And it reminded me of the movie Her, where everyone's just walking around in their own operating system and not communicating with each other. And that's what they felt like too. Bedtime and morning were the two, though, most frequent pain points. And many of them mentioned reaching for it first thing in the morning and cheating by accident and realizing, oh my gosh, I wasn't supposed to be on social media today or on my phone today, and catching themselves and writing about it, and how difficult it was to not go to bed at night and, have the FOMO, the fear of missing out of what happened during the day and what did my friends have for dinner and all these sorts of things at morning and bedtime. But then these other things all fall into that bucket where anytime I had a minute, anytime I had a second of downtime, when they were bored. So that kind of encapsulates all these other things. When I'm in the bathroom, when I'm, waiting online for something, when I have a break, when I'm waiting for class to start, when I'm cooking and I'm waiting for water to boil, like they're on their phones. So, and then this one was sort of sad, which is that's what their friends do when they get together. And that's what my kids do too. They sit with their friends, they're all looking at their own phones on the couch. And when you're the only one not doing it at a restaurant or in a living room, you feel like you do on the bus. You feel kind of weird. So they mentioned this as their time of day. And then what I asked what they did instead, to me, this was like the hopefulness of the world, which is my kids' elementary school is fighting over start times and kids getting enough sleep and over too much homework and over schedule and all this stuff. What everybody did when they didn't have their phones was they actually socialized. They talked about getting together with friends from my class and playing cards. And they talked about reading a book. And someone said I know it's crazy, right? That they read a book this weekend and they did their chores and they were more productive. They got their homework done. And they slept more because their stuff was done for the day. And they figured I might as well sleep. I'm done with everything else. Some of them mentioned TV, but that doesn't interest them as much because you have to watch what's on, right? You don't get on demand and it doesn't start right away after 10 seconds. So you don't get that constant, those many hours racked up. So this is what they expressed doing instead. And then when I asked them for a reflection, I really felt like this comment was worth sharing because to me, it really summarizes what we talked about in class afterwards. Most students told me it needs to be 48 hours at least. Most students told me that day one was horrible, that it was awful, that they felt like they were mad at me. I'm glad I didn't bump into any of them on campus. That they were feeling like they were missing everything. Their friends were getting upset with them. They were, incredibly frustrated. They felt very disconnected and it made them sort of more upset. So they were sort of bitter in the beginning because they felt like everyone's saying that social media makes you depressed or bad or gives you fear of missing out. But they felt more fear of missing out not being able to be online the first day. The second day, though, they all said they woke up refreshed. They were like, wow, I don't have to check social media today. I don't have to see what people are doing. I don't have to do that this morning. I'm going to get ready really fast and get out to the gym. I have time for the gym. They actually felt like it was a weight off their shoulders. So this quote, which you've probably been reading while I'm talking, I just really liked. I thought it encapsulated everything. And the part that he compared it to the Matrix. and said, I never realized how big of a role I've allowed social media to play in my everyday life. And that's the piece I want them to know, is that it's their opting in, it's their active engagement that's doing it. It's not happening to them, it's their choice. And I want them as people and as marketers to know that that's the case, that if you're engaging with a client, for a client, it's your privileged time with that customer to engage with them on social media. So do it wisely. Don't waste it. Don't squander it. So I want them to have that mindfulness and to be aware that this is time in your day, and it's precious time in your day that you're spending on these platforms. And that brings me to my third part of the assignment. So this I usually give them 2 weeks to complete. So once they're done with the detox, I then take them into the professional relationship part of it. This is where I'm taking them out of their own self and their own head and their own awareness. And I'm bringing them into, what does this mean for you as a potential future employer, as a person who leaves a digital footprint, as a person who wants to engage with people online? And what I have them do here is that I have them share their detox story with the public. And I want them to do that with the audience of a future employer in mind. So we do it on LinkedIn. And I'm aware that my goal in this exercise is not to try to get them off of social media permanently. These are marketing students, and it's a social media class. And, I want them to be more mindful of their usage, but then I want them to be able to express to future employers that, yes, I am of this generation that's addicted to their phones and doesn't see the forest for the trees, but I've taken myself out of it, and I've looked at it as a student of consumer behavior. And I've looked at it from the outside, sort of like looking at my generation, like I'm at the zoo, and I'm seeing what they're doing on the bus. I'm seeing that we're all at restaurants and we're all on our own phones, and this is crazy. And this is how I want to use that to be a responsible marketer. So knowing that the audience is a future employer, they do a LinkedIn article, which also this article doubles in its benefits of, I do a little sidebar on, Elaine will be happy about this, about good blog writing and, elements of the way you structure it and the way you write it. And a lot of them ask me to edit and look at it first before they post it on LinkedIn, which I'm happy to do. Or some of them just post it right up there. And this is one of the articles. So we just finished this. We're in like week 7 right now of our semester. So students just handed this in the end of week 5. So this is one of the most recent posts that we've seen. And what I really love about this one is that you can see one of my students from last year made a comment who said, I remember this project. It really is at the end of the semester when students review and rate my class and talk about my class, they always talk about this project. It really changes the way that they think about themselves. And being out of the detox, I wouldn't say long term that they necessarily use social media less, although I do gauge it over the course of the semester. And now 2 weeks later, most of them say they haven't reinstalled. So a lot of them took off social media apps from their phone so they wouldn't be tempted during the 48 hours. And a lot of them told me when they took 7 off, they put 5 back on. So they're still, using a little bit less, or maybe they realized they weren't as dependent on a few of them. But some of them go back in and do a little detox again, the year later or the year after that, because they remembered that it was a meaningful experience. So I'll end here, but just to summarize, my approach is really to make this an experience, not just an assignment. So from personal wellness and personal awareness and mindfulness to how you represent yourself to other people out there, especially employers, and then how you become a socially responsible marketer yourself, in terms of you're going to have, audience members who are addicted to their phones too. So think about how they're using it and how you can engage most effectively with them. And the quote that I'll end with is from a student this semester, Melissa. This project should not be limited to this class. It should be mandatory for all business students. I would have benefited even more had I done it as a freshman, but luckily I did it before entering the workforce. So I mentioned this very briefly at last year's ProfCon in passing, and I got so much interest and questions about it that I really wanted this opportunity to share it in a deeper way with you guys, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have now. Oh, sorry. So I did not put my email on here, but I can share it with all of you. But my Twitter handle is at the bottom of this slide.
Awesome. Thank you, Stacy. So a quick question. And those of you who jumped in maybe mid presentation, if you have questions for Stacy, just chat them in. We'll run through them right now. We've got some time to kind of dive into some of these things. So that's exciting. Were there conversations regarding when students felt, you had a slide up that was pretty interesting on when they felt the need or the urge, like to check the phone. Were there any conversations on the flip side of that, of how, because now they felt that, like, are they noticing businesses targeting them specifically during those times? Because that's when we as humans have that urge to pull out the phone.
That's a great point. And I haven't brought it at this point in the assignment. I don't bring it to how you do things as a marketer differently. But I'm going to add that to the assignment. I think that's a great question.
Was kind of interesting. So I'll just go through some of these questions that we have. Have you or will you integrate the new usage time recorders on socials like Instagram?
So I don't want, I could probably add it as a third data point, but I don't want it to replace their estimates, because I think it's very telling that they don't realize some of this stuff is actually digital. And I'm trying to incorporate, I'm trying to incorporate not just social media here. I'm trying to incorporate everything. And I think that awareness, you know, if you grow a plant in a garden, it doesn't realize it's in a garden. It just thinks everything is a plant, right? So I want them to realize, like, they're a student of marketing. So they need to sort of take themselves out of the crowd and kind of look at it from above and say, wow, all these people are looking at their screens on the bus. And, you know, I want them to have that distance. So I think it's important that they go through the exercise of estimating, and maybe I'll check their actuals along. I'll tell them they can check their actuals with their phones and apps as well.
Some of these worksheets that you have, and we've made a note on our end to, if it's all right with you, to grab them from you, and then when we email out the presentations and recordings, we'll make sure those are available as well.
Happy to.
As far as grading, how do you assess this? Like, what are you doing to I guess build people back up after maybe they just had like the worst couple of days of their life?
You're hitting a sore spot, because I'm a little bit behind right now on all of these. But I'll be honest, they all feel good after the second day. It's just the first day that they feel bad. And I tell them, my class meets on a Tuesday, and I tell them not to make their second day Monday, because I want them to have a little bit of space to talk about it in the class. So I have a rubric that basically mirrors what's on the assignment. So I basically say, you know, I don't judge them. You know, did you do the assignment? I don't measure their accuracy as, you know, part of their grade or not. It's more of their takeaways and their, now what, you know, what does this mean, and what would you do differently or not? That's the bigger piece, I think, that that I'm grading them on. It's more qualitative.
I missed this. I apologize. I know you showed us a screenshot of some LinkedIn posts in reflection of this project. Are you requiring people to, is that where you're requiring people to write about this, or do they have to post it somewhere publicly, or is that just kind of extra on what they're doing on their own accord?
Yeah, no, phase 3 of the project is a public post on LinkedIn. And I haven't had anyone push back on that because, oh, I should mention this. I couch this posting on LinkedIn in with another assignment that's unrelated to the detox, which is a personal branding assignment where I'm also in this assignment, they're also updating their entire LinkedIn page. So I do a session on, marketing yourself on LinkedIn, and I give them tips from everything from the copy to the photos to the experience to the multimedia. And so it follows. So they're working on the blog post for 2 weeks, but the week in between that week 4, I actually do an hour on LinkedIn. So the assignment they're handing in is a checklist that they've updated their LinkedIn page for all these best practices and that they've added the article. I'll coach them though, like in class, I'll tell them if someone wrote in their reflection from assignment 2, if they wrote that, they sit on the toilet for an hour on their phone, which one person did write all about his bathroom activities in his reflection. I coached him, you're writing for an employer, so let's talk about how to phrase this and, position it differently, knowing that it's like a job interview. Would you talk about that in a job interview? I don't want to judge you. If you would, then fine. But if you wouldn't, then don't put it in your article that way.
So that checklist, that LinkedIn checklist, is that something that you have like mentally, or do you actually have a worksheet that they go through?
It's actually part of this same assignment. Okay. I cleaned it up for the purpose of this deck because it was a little bit outside the topic, but it's in the same, in this assignment, share your detox story. This number 1 is actually number 3. And in my real assignment, number 1 and 2 is give me your LinkedIn address and check off that you've done all these things.
That will be available as
well.
So
I'm actually, and I'm actually grading all of the above together.
Awesome. So Stacy, you mentioned the term or the phrase be a socially responsible marketer. How do you explain that to your students? What's that conversation like?
So it's tricky, but I always bring up the dark side of digital and social. I'm not like quiet about that. So we have a whole session on, is Facebook good or bad for society? And we have a whole conversation about fake news and should Facebook and Twitter and Google be regulated? And, I try to have them debate with each other, and it gets a little, especially right now, political in terms of the discussions. But I talk to them about, so as a marketer, now that you realize how connected everyone is that healthy? Is that okay? And as a marketer, would you do anything differently? So should you be fully where the people are and encourage them to be there more? Or would you think about ways you can engage with them online and offline and maybe make the time with them more important than anything? I want them to realize that the time that a customer pays attention to them is precious time. And so when you have 7.5 hours of time a day that's just sucked into like a game or whatever rabbit hole they're in, the time is not treated as precious. So I feel like it makes you a more concise marketer as well. If you're realizing, I've got probably 10 seconds in their feed to make an impression. What can I share that enhances their life and makes them like me in a concise, ethical way? I don't know if that helped, but I ask them for examples too, and I share videos, and I'll talk about Chipotle and content marketing. We have, it's more of a discussion than a.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. When students are in the second phase, here's a question about the second phase of the assignment detox. Are they allowed to talk on the phone or answer text message? Did you cover that at all?
Yes. So if you can read, I don't know if you can read this if it's too small.
Yeah, the images are pretty pixelated, but
it's too small. I can't even read it on my paper. It's so small. So basically, I tell them it's okay to talk on the phone and to text. I also tell them it's okay to use it as an alarm clock and as a GPS and to check the bus schedule. But I tell them, just make a note. Just note that you've done that. You know, it goes into your discussion because you're being mindful of your usage. And wow, I never realized how dependent I need my phone to do things in the real world. It's not just consuming entertainment content. It's also, you know, I'll be late for my class if I'm not connected to the internet.
Okay. Awesome. Looks like this might be our last question unless we get any more coming in. This is about LinkedIn. Do you think that we invade students' privacy when we connect with them through LinkedIn? The students do not have a choice but to connect with you, I guess is the assumption there.
Yeah, so I actually don't make them connect with me. That person who called me out wanted to. And most of them want to because I worked in digital marketing for 25 years before I started teaching, and they all want me to help them with their jobs. So most of them do connect with me. If a student tries to connect with me on Facebook, I do not. I don't think that's the place for me to talk to students. But what I'll tell them is that they should make this article public. So even if we're not connected, they need to give me the URL of the article and I need to be able to find it. They don't have to, this person happened to, call me out in it, but they don't have to do that at all. But they do have to give me the URL of it and make the URL public. In terms of the page, when I evaluate their updated page, they can give me a screenshot. They don't have to, if they're against connecting with me, then they could give me a screenshot.
Great. Let me just double check and make sure. I think that's all the questions we have. So this was a fascinating, I mean, not just for students, right? It's fascinating for everyone to attempt a 48-hour social media digital detox. So this is fascinating, Stacy. Thank you so much for sharing this experience that you provide for your students in your class. Once again, your slide deck will be made available. Lots of awesome worksheets, and we've had a lot of questions on how to get a hold of that, and we'll make sure those are available. So, Stacy, thank you so much for spending the afternoon with us.
Thank you.